We also on the list noted that the Catholic bishops, priests, and monks actually served in battle. And it's kind of a historical reality that the barbarian invasions of the West militarized the church, including in the clergy ranks. This, of course, hit a climax during the Crusades, where you had whole monastic military orders. This is something very offensive to the Orthodox mentality about the role of clergy and monks with regards to warfare. We have clergy in the military, but they're chaplains. They aren't like supposed to be killing people.
What Papadakis and Meyendorff argue is that post Dictatus Papae, this allowed the papacy to essentially create, although not yet a full-on standing army, monastic warrior monks who would be really the monk knight armies of the papacy. And so originally, I'm not saying that they are now, I know we all know the history of the Templars, I think, but originally the Templars and their history and the Knights Hospitaller and so forth were actually to be agents, knights, and warrior monks of the papacy. Now, maybe you think that's cool or whatever. It's from a literary perspective, I guess it's kind of cool. But did you notice that at Chalcedon, all monastics are forbidden from any kind of warfare or anything like this? Now, whether you think it's right or wrong, does it not at least show a vast shift in the 11th century to have warrior fighting monks that are the agents of the Pope? Does that not show a big difference between the way the church in the first 1,000 years viewed monasticism?
Hello, Al here. You just saw a clip from Father Trenham, and you saw another one from J. Dyer criticizing the Catholic view in the medieval ages of clergy in the armies, specifically in a combat role, not a chaplaincy role, but a combat role, with sword and etc. And I've heard this a couple times, and I just want to respond to it as someone who has read a lot of medieval primary sources. I'd like to shed some light on what the situation actually was in the medieval era, both in the East and the West. Now, J. Dyer quoted a canon of Chalcedon. It says, Canon 7, "We have decreed that those who have once been enrolled in the clergy or been made monks shall accept neither a military charge nor any secular dignity, and if they presume to do so and not repent in such wise as to turn again to that which they had first chosen for the love of God, they shall be anathematized." So basically, no clergy, no monks in the army. Now, of course, this is a canon from the year 451. It's a canon law proclamation, and canon law is subject to change. And by the time of the 10th and 11th century, this canon law had fallen into disuse both in East and West. And that's not a big deal, because that happens to a lot. There's a lot of canon law in the first millennium that we don't use right now. For example, Canon 15 at the Council of Nicaea, a council both Catholic and Eastern Orthodox claim as their own, it says, "On account of the great disturbance and discords that occur, it is decreed that the custom prevailing in certain places contrary to the canon must wholly be done away with, so that neither bishop, presbyter, nor deacon shall pass from city to city. And if anyone, after this decree of the Holy and Great Synod, shall attempt any such thing or continue in any such course, his proceedings shall be utterly void, and he shall be restored to the church for which he was ordained bishop or presbyter." So basically, if you're a clergyman, a bishop or presbyter, say you're ordained in the city of Alexandria, you had to be a priest in Alexandria. That's where your faculties would be until the day you died. Now, in both Catholic and Eastern Orthodox Church, you have bishops moving around from city to city. Obviously, that canon law has fallen into disuse, like Pope Francis, the Bishop of Rome, was once Archbishop of Buenos Aires. Patriarch Kirill in Russia used to be the Bishop of Smolensk. So they moved around. Council of Nicaea says you can't do that, but that's canon law, and canon law changes over time. So now, just to show that in the The early medieval, in the 9th, 10th, and 11th century, Canon 7 of Chalcedon had fallen into disuse, both in the East and the West. Let me give you 3 examples. I'm going to be quoting from Ottonian Germany, the Chronicon of Thietmar of Merseburg. And I'm going to quote, this is on chapter 4 of book 1, page 69 of this volume. While returning from an expedition against the Bohemians, Bishop Arn of Würzburg set up his tent near this river, in the region of Schkeuditz on a hill, by the road leading to the north. As he chanted mass, he was surrounded by a hostile army. After all his companions had been martyred, he too was offered to God, along with the host which had been consecrated to the sacrifice of praise. This occurred in the year 892 of the Incarnation and in the times of Emperor Arnulf. So he was returning from a expedition against the Bohemians, and this is 892, before the schism. Let's look at another example. This is book 2 of the Chronicon, chapter 27. I have related the stories of these 2 bishops so that you, the reader, may know that the grace of heaven often revealed to the emperor what is wished to occur on earth. When Otto heard of the death of this great father, he had Michael succeed him. When the bishop had ruled, the see committed to him long and well. He and other Bavarian leaders went to rescue the eastern regions where the Hungarians were again causing trouble. But the battle between them had barely begun when, alas, our forces were beaten and utterly demolished by the enemy. The bishop lost an ear, was also wounded in his other limbs, and lay among the fallen as if he were dead. Lying next to him was an enemy warrior. When he realized that the bishop alone was alive and feeling safe from the snares of the enemy, he took a lance and tried to kill him. Strengthened by the Lord, the bishop emerged victorious from the long, difficult struggle and killed his enemy. Finally, traveling by various rough paths, he arrived safely in familiar territory, to the great joy of the flock and all Christians. He was held to be a brave warrior by all the clergy. What about Canon 7? And the best of the pastors by the people, and his mutilation brought him no shame, but rather great honor. But now I must return to narrating the course of events. How come these people weren't saying Canon 7 of Chalcedon completely forbids that clergy and monks, and remember the bishops are monks, going into battle? And this is in the year, it says in a footnote that this bishop was Michael of Regensburg, who was from 941 to 972. I believe this was in the 960s, prior to the schism. So this is Orthodox. How come they were going against Canon 7 of Chalcedon? Because that was canon law centuries ago that had fallen into disuse, just like Canon 15 of Nicaea has. Let me give one more example. In the Byzantine Empire in the 11th century. This is during the Pecheneг War, so 1047 to 1053. That was when okay, page 57. This is chapter 7 of Michael Ateliates, the 11th century Byzantine historian. The emperor then decided to reinforce the army from the eastern units, and in this way to suppress the Scythian army. He quickly transported soldiers from Asia to Europe to augment his host and sent it against the Scythians. As its commander, he appointed a eunuch priest, honoring him with the rank of rector. The latter gathered his forces and marched against the enemy. What? Canon 7 of Chalcedon says you can't do this. But obviously they're doing this in the East and West. That canon has fallen into disuse, like Canon 15 of Nicaea and many other canons. So let's put this argument to rest. There were clergy in battle. in the Orthodox Church since the 9th, 10th, and 11th century, as I've given 3 examples from, because they believe the 9th century and 10th century and the 11th century pre-1054 are Orthodox. And this was true both in the West and in the Byzantine Empire. And so, yeah, I think it's time we put this argument to rest, since both medieval churches agreed that Canon 7 of Chalcedon had fallen into disuse, and both sides of Christendom were happy to send their clergy into battle as combat troops. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. God bless.